this whole marriage authority thing seems like it doesn't actually matter, let me tell you a story from my own life. So my denomination has a policy that if you are going to serve on the leadership board and you are living with somebody, you have to be married. That totally makes sense from a Christian viewpoint. The problem is when you have to define who's married. I was a young pastor and I was serving in a church that was setting up a church board for the very first time. It wasn't a particularly large church, but we did have a couple of families that were willing to join. And yes, my denomination allows women in all positions of leadership. One couple was married legally. They had been married in the church recently in front of all their families and friends. They met the qualifications. Another couple was an older couple. They were only fairly recently married, like 6 or 8 years. Both of their previous spouses had died to cancer, and they had met in a support recovery group. They had gotten married in, I think it was their garden, with family and friends and their previous pastor officiating, but they hadn't signed the marriage license because they didn't want to lose their survivor benefits that came with their previous spouses. They wouldn't have been able to survive. A third couple had eloped. They had just taken off, gotten the justice of the peace to sign their certificate, and that was it. There was also a fourth couple that was willing to be part of the leadership team. They had been living together for a good 20 years. All of their bank accounts were joint bank accounts. They were both on the title for their house, but they had never been married by the state. They had also never been married in a church. They had never had a ceremony of any kind. They had simply started living together, I think it was 26 years before, and had never stopped. Now the question is, who should I bring on my leadership board? One couple was pretty obvious. They had all three. But it was a legitimate struggle for me to figure out who I should bring on from the others. Who is married and who isn't. We had people who were missing at least one of the authorities that we normally have for marriage. See, this is a struggle that we really are dealing with in the church. As more people are living together, as more people are getting certificates signed in courthouses, and as different people are getting married, who are we going to recognize? Are we going to recognize the celebrity who got married for 3 days and then got divorced? Some people are worried about having to recognize homosexuals that come into their church. But regardless of where you stand on any of these, we have to decide what form of marriage we're going to recognize. That is an incredibly crucial task for the church in the 21st century, and yet it is one that we often ignore. So this isn't just some hypothetical thing that doesn't matter in the real world. This really has boots on the ground application that we need to figure out. I suppose I should tell you how I have resolved this situation, huh? Well, I'm not particularly proud of what I did. I basically asked all of the couples, are you two married? And if they said yes, then I let them in. In the end, I went with an intent-based definition of marriage. That the authority didn't matter so much as their intention of being married and in a committed relationship. I'm not really sure I made the right decision, though. I've struggled with that for a decade or so. I'm still not sure. I can't think of a way that I would have made a better decision, but I'm not satisfied with the one that I did.